On the Hawkeyes Sports Network from Learfield, this is the Fight for Iowa podcast, brought to you by Atlantic Coca-Cola Bottling Company, Cenex, Iowa's Corn Farmers, Green State Credit Union, Quick Star, and by University of Iowa Healthcare. This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
Iowa football is just a couple weeks into spring practice. Much of the coverage is centered on the competition at quarterback, with the incumbent Spencer Petras, Alex Padilla, and newcomer Joey Labus all getting plenty of reps. Offensive coordinator Brian Ferentz had quarterback coach added to his duties in the offseason and saw a former teammate enter the picture as tight ends coach. Abdul Hodge was an all-Big Ten linebacker with the Hawkeyes in the early 2000s. Hodge was tight end mentor at South Dakota before coming back home. He plans to be around Iowa City for a long time. Abdul Hodge spends the next few minutes with us on Fight for Iowa following these messages.
More of the Fight for Iowa podcast after this.
It's been a long day. Your schedule's tight. Can we just take care of dinner for you? Quick Star has take-home meals, not cheap flash frozen stuff. Made from scratch, fresh, never frozen. Great quality because we make it ourselves. Grab a meal now to heat and eat later. Great kitchen cravings meals like fettuccine alfredo with grilled chicken, meatloaf with mashed potatoes and gravy, roast turkey with dressing and mashed potatoes. I feel a meal, a great family meal coming on that you didn't even have to cook. Quick Star, we got you covered.
This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
Iowa football embraces the handle tight end U. Who could argue? From Cook to Clark to Kittle, Hawkinson, Fant, and Moeaki, Kirk Ferentz' program has featured the line of scrimmage for more than terrific offensive lines. New Hawkeye tight end coach Abdul Hodge starred in tandem with All-American Chad Greenway, Grant Steen, George Lewis, and Ed Miles in forming a menacing linebacker group that knocked more than one great tight end off his feet. Hodge led the Big Ten in tackles and is third all-time at Iowa with 453 stops. The Hawkeyes won 38 games from 2002 through 2005 with Hodge roaming the turf. He'll blitz any new challenge like the one he faces now, coaching up all Big Ten Sam Laporta and Luke Lachey, saying football is football. So far, so good.
No, it's great being back. You know, it's a little different being on the offense side of the ball, but, you know, the way I look at it, football is football. You know, it's a very similar technique and fundamentals. There's some changes and some different elements of the game, but for the most part, you know, there's a lot of carryover.
You covered tight ends when you played, so it's kind of a different perspective now that you're the tight ends coach. Yeah,
covered a lot of tight ends. Now I'm the tight ends coach, so I'm kind of just learning from their perspective. It's two different perspectives. You know, the tight ends are trying to, you know, at least trying to get open and create separations. And when you use that linebacker, you're trying to stay in leverage and don't allow separation. So at least I know what not to do, you know. But when it comes down to it, you know, I'm just hitting the ground running. Been meeting with Brian, Coach Ferentz, on a consistent basis, just trying to learn as quickly as possible. I'm not going to learn everything overnight, but the guys have been great. I've met with Liddell Betts, running back coach. I've met with Kelton Copeland. Those guys have been great, just transitioning a lot of the information to me so I can get up to speed.
If there are two great position traditions at Iowa, the first two that come to mind with a lot of fans would be linebackers and tight ends. And, of course, your name is synonymous with linebacker. And I'm sure when Kirk called you and said, hey, we want you to come to Iowa and coach, you immediately thought of Chad Greenway and Grant Steen and George Lewis and Edmund Miles and the so many good times you had, and to really help get this program to the elite level it is now.
Yeah, you know, when he first gave me the call and told me that there was a tight end opportunity to come here and coach tight end, you know, my first instinct is just think about the guys that have came through, like the Dallas Clarks of the world, the Moeakis, you know, and the Kittles of the world, and also the coaches that have taught that position, going back to Coach Eric Johnson and Reese Morgan, and then Coach Brian Ferentz, and also LeVar Woods. So that standard have been really, really high. So the first thing I told him is I know the importance of that position, and I don't take it lightly. So I just wanted to come in as soon as possible and learn as much as possible and just hit the ground running and make sure I keep the ball moving forward.
Abdul, when you look at the game today, position doesn't matter. What's stayed the same about college football when you played? What's been a significant change in your mind as a coach?
Yeah, I think as a player, going back and stating when I play here as a player and is now as a coach, when it comes down to it, you still got to dominate the line of scrimmage. Everything is going to start up front on both sides of the ball. So on the defense side of the ball, those guys are trying to attack. On the offense side of the ball, on offense, we're trying to create movement up front. And move guys vertically and laterally, and depending on the different types of plays. But when it comes down to it, the fundamentals are the same. You want to run the football. You want to protect the ball. You want to create explosive. Defensively, they want to eliminate explosives. And then clock management and situational football. So those types of things are still the same. But when I look at it, the skill set now in terms of linebackers and tight ends are much different, in my opinion. You got to have more of a unique skill set. So you take a look at the linebackers, those guys got to be able to play a lot more in space now, because a lot of times those offenses are really balanced in terms of running on the perimeter, passing on the perimeter. Offensively, tight ends got to have a unique skill set. Those guys are not just run game, in the run game, but they're also stretching the field, a lot of vertical concepts. So those guys have to be able to not only block in the run game and pass pro, but also get on the perimeter and stretch the field vertically.
In that sense, in that vernacular, you have two really good ones in Sam Laporta, Luke Lachey. You've got other kids that can play the game and some outstanding recruits coming in. How do you feel about the tight end group?
For one, coming in and transitioning to tight end is always helps when you got all the guys coming back from last year. So they'll know more than you. So that's always great, and that's how it should be. Those guys are studying the game as well. Luke Lachey and Sam Laporta, those guys have been really great players. They got a lot of volume in terms of their repetition and that kind of stuff. So as a coach coming in, those guys know a lot was going on, but they also can coach the young guys up as well and be coaches on the field. Myself, as those guys are coming in with a lot of great confidence, it's my job just to continuously move those guys forward and just continuously develop them in terms of the techniques and fundamentals, but also share a little bit more information as well from a defense perspective and what those guys are going to be, how those guys are going to be defended and attacked.
Kirk Ferentz has proven over 23 years that he can change with the times, yet he's number one going to run the football, play good, stout defense. What was it like playing for him? What's it like coaching for him?
Playing for him, he's been very consistent. That's what I'll say. As his personality is very consistent, that's probably why he's been successful for so long. But playing for him, he gives you a lot of confidence. He's very direct in his words. He's got great leadership, and he knows a lot about football, offense, defense, and special teams. But more importantly, he also knows about people. Working with him as a coach, it's been great. The first day I've been here, the first thing he did was bring me in his office and start teaching me the run game. So it amused me that he's standing up, showing me the stance and the read steps. So, you have a lot of respect for him because he's sharp, man. He's a sharp individual. He's very smart. He's a great leader. In our staff meetings, just like he was talking to a team as a player, he's leading that staff meeting. Very direct in his communication. You understand what needs to be going on in terms of offense, defense, special teams, recruiting, off the field, community. So he's got a lot covered. So from a coach coming in, you just want to learn as much from him as possible and to translate that and just be a better person, be a better father, and also be a better leader in the community.
Abdul Hodge tight end teammates included Scott Chandler, Tony Moiaki, Tony Jackson, Brandon Myers, and C.J. Barkema. There's a wealth of insight and helpful advice a phone call away should Hodge decide he needs some additional assistance at tight end U. A spring practice update is next on Fight for Iowa.
More of the Fight for Iowa podcast after this.
Here in Iowa, corn is more than our livelihood. It's our way of life. We use it to feed our livestock, helping us raise healthy pigs, cows, and chickens. We use it to make ethanol, helping us power a prosperous, clean-burning future. We use it to nourish our families, helping us stay strong generation to generation. And the more we use it, the more it boosts our economy, helping elevate the lives of all Iowans. You might think Iowa grows corn, but the truth is, corn grows Iowa.
Expert care for sports injuries means getting back in the game sooner and stronger. I'm Dr. Brian Wolf, Director at University of Iowa Sports Medicine and Team Physician for the Iowa Hawkeyes. You should never play through pain. That's why our sports medicine experts are here for you with same day, next day, and evening appointments. For imaging, therapy, or surgery, choose the team the Iowa Hawkeyes choose. Schedule a visit at uihc.org/sportsmedicine.
This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
Iowa quarterback Spencer Petras is feeling the heat of Alex Padilla and freshman Joey Labus, but that's fine with him. The senior from California gets it.
Anytime you play a competitive sport like football, you always have to compete in everything you do. So I'm excited just to be out here and have some fun with my teammates.
Half a dozen practices in. How do you feel?
I feel really good. I think we're making a lot of progress offensively. I've been really happy with just the way we're competing every day, and the things that we set out to change. I can see a lot of improvement in a lot of different areas. So, competition brings the best out of everyone involved, and couldn't do it to better guys. I'm excited to continue to work with them, and it'll be fun.
A little strange not having Linderbaum underneath you, but talk about the center position and the offensive line as a whole.
Yeah, obviously, it's hard to replace a guy like Tyler, but, Tyler Ellsbury, Matt Fagan, Logan Jones, these guys have been stepping up and doing a really good job, especially for a lot of them. They haven't, for Ellsbury and Logan Jones haven't played a ton of center, so they're, learning as they go, but they're improving quite a bit. And with the rest of the line, I'm excited. Like I'm seeing a lot of good leadership out of guys like Mason Richmond, Connor Colby, Jack Plum, the guys that have played, really stepping up and trying to continue to improve and make this unit as strong as we can be.
Petras ranks 13th in career passing and led Iowa to a 10-win season, West Division title, and a spot in last December's Big Ten title game. As for Coach Kirk Ferentz, the former English teacher, well, he's thrilled to be back in the classroom.
First of all, it's just good to be back practicing football. You only get so many opportunities during the calendar year, so these 15 days are really they're just really beneficial for everybody. It's a real opportunity for guys to move forward, learn a little bit more football, and just give us a better gauge as coaches where our roster's at. So far so good, and I'm really pleased with the way the guys are working. I wish we had a few less guys injured, but it's part of spring football, and we'll get through that.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts in the offensive line. I was taking note of that today. But guys are hustling. Guys are vying for spots.
Yeah, they are. And today's really the first day we had officials out, so that was a little bit new and playing some situations. So it's good learning for our guys. But the biggest focus, at least from my vantage point in spring football, is just individual improvement. And we worry about the cohesiveness part of it a little bit later on. But, right now you're just trying to measure guys' growth, and it's a great opportunity. Not only practicing, but having good meeting time where they can see themselves from practice, and that to me is where the improvement really takes place. If they're listening and paying attention and go back to the practice field with the right attitude, that's where the improvement really grabs on.
The Hawkeyes open the season Labor Day weekend, hosting powerful FCS member South Dakota State. I'll have a final thought in just a minute on Fight for Iowa.
More of the Fight for Iowa podcast after this.
Atlantic Coca-Cola Bottling Company is proud to support the local communities in which we live, work, and play. Every day, Atlantic Coca-Cola bottling trucks continue to help the food and beverage supply chain by delivering products to retail outlets and those restaurants providing carry-out and delivery services. We know Iowans are resilient, and together we are strong.
This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
The Hawkeyes have announced that Saturday, April 23rd will conclude spring practice. It'll be held inside Kinnick Stadium, and it's open to the public. Thanks for tuning in this week to Fight for Iowa. I'm Gary Dolphin. Go Hawks.
Hawkeye fans, remember to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Once you become a Fight for Iowa podcast subscriber, you'll automatically receive the latest episodes of the Fight for Iowa podcast, the Hawkeyes Voice podcast, Hawk Talk replays, exclusive game day content, and more. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Hawkeye Sports Network.